It began with a glint, barely the size of a coin, seen through a pair of German Zeiss field binoculars on the afternoon of February 2, 1943, near the frozen outskirts of Velikiye Luki, a city whose name had become synonymous with attrition. The Wehrmacht platoon leader who spotted it first thought it might be the reflection from shattered glass or a distant periscope. But the reflection appeared twice in 2 hours, at precisely the same point, though no movement followed. Within minutes, the German artillery battery assigned to cover the northern railway embankment had zeroed in. A dozen 105mm shells pounded the coordinates, sending shards of ice and soil high into the air. When the dust settled, no figure emerged, no sign of life, just the steady silence of a city dying by inches. What the Germans didn't know, and what they would only learn months later from captured reports, was that the glint they had shelled so precisely was not the giveaway of an enemy sniper's scope, but the exact opposite, a mirror deliberately planted to deceive them. Behind another mirror, 30 meters away, hidden under a frozen pile of railway sleepers and snow, Senior Sergeant Ivan Mikhailovich Sidorenko lay utterly still, his Mosin Nagant 9130 rifle resting on a sandbag wrapped in burlap, his breath forming barely visible vapor. For 72 hours, the man whose commanding officer had once dismissed him as too clever for his own good had made himself functionally invisible through what one witness later called a stupid mirror trick. By early 1943, the Eastern Front had become a laboratory of desperation. German Sixth Army had just capitulated at Stalingrad, but the Red Army's sniper doctrine was only beginning its ascent into legend. Soviet command statistics show that by that winter, sniper schools in Moscow and Leningrad were producing over 3,500 marksmen every 2 months, with each trainee firing up to 1-200 practice rounds before deployment. Ammunition was cheap compared to men. But battlefield camouflage, true invisibility, remained an unsolved problem. White smocks and snow nets helped against the landscape, yet the human face and rifle optics still betrayed movement, especially under sunlight. German counter-snipers, equipped with high-grade Zeiss Zielvier 4X scopes on Karabiner 98K rifles, learned to hunt the faintest flash of reflection from Soviet glass. One German sniper manual even instructed, "Do not look for men, look for light." It was against this doctrine that Sidorenko's mirror trick emerged, not as a clever prank, but as a mathematical solution to geometry, reflection, and death. Before the war, Sidorenko had worked as an apprentice draftsman in a textile factory in Smolensk, trained to understand light angles in machine design. When the war came, he joined the 334th Rifle Division and was issued the standard Mosin Nagant, fitted with the Pu 3.5X telescopic sight, a crude yet rugged optic capable of reliable zeroing even after being dropped in mud. But Sidorenko hated its glare. He noticed that, under certain conditions, the convex lens reflected sunlight, like a signal mirror visible over half a kilometer. During one patrol in 1942, his spotter was killed when a German sniper followed a glint off Sidorenko's scope. The incident haunted him. He swore never to let physics betray him again. Months later, lying in a half-collapsed barn near Velikiye Luki, he experimented with fragments of broken mirrors scavenged from a bombed house. By aligning 2 shards at shallow opposing angles and planting them 10 meters apart, he found he could redirect sunlight so that any reflection of his real scope was lost in the mirrored chaos. The setup looked idiotic. 2 bits of broken glass stuck in snow, but it scattered light in a way that misled anyone watching through optics. His comrades laughed, calling him the mirror fool. His platoon commander nearly reprimanded him for time-wasting tinkering. Yet, On February 2nd, that trick saved his life and decimated a German sniper section that spent 3 days firing at ghosts. The operation that placed Sidorenko there had been simple on paper. Deny the Germans observation over the railway, cutting where Soviet supply trains delivered 600 tons of ammunition per day to the Third Shock Army. Any enemy eyes on that stretch risked cutting the artery of the entire sector. The Soviets couldn't afford artillery duels. Ammunition had to be rationed to 14 rounds per gun per day. So they used snipers as economy weapons, precision instruments in a war of mass. Sidorenko's assignment: neutralize any German spotters covering the railway embankment. He was inserted with 2 comrades on January 31st, crawling through frozen brush at night with 40 kilograms of gear. Rifle, ammunition, 2 mirrors, rations for 3 days, and a shortwave receiver powered by hand crank. At 25 degrees Celsius, even breathing produced frostburn inside the nostrils. The snow had a crust of ice that cracked if you shifted weight too fast. They dug their hides with entrenching tools, using railway debris for cover. Within 12 hours, his companions had been wounded, one by mortar shrapnel, the other frostbitten beyond function. Alone, Sidorenko stayed. He had 60 rounds, 1 scope, and 2 pieces of mirror. His rifle, serial 48973, was already worn. The bolt's lugs had a visible ridge from overuse. The firing pin spring reduced to 38 newtons from the regulation 50. Still, the Mosin could deliver a 1-inch grouping at 100 meters if handled gently. Sidorenko wrapped the barrel in cloth soaked in snowmelt to reduce heat shimmer and packed snow around his rifle to steady it. For 3 days, he barely moved. He urinated through a tube buried in the snow. He ate compressed rye biscuits mixed with frozen pork fat. The mirror decoy lay 15 meters away, half buried, catching the weak sun. German snipers across the line fixated on it like moths to a flame. Whenever they fired, Sidorenko observed the faint muzzle flash from their position, noting the delay between sound and impact. From that, he calculated distance, about 420 meters. On the morning of February 3rd, through a haze of snow, he saw the faint outline of a man adjusting binoculars behind a telegraph pole. He waited until the man leaned out just enough to align with the reflection. 1 slow breath, half exhale, squeeze. The 7.62 XX 54 mm ER round left the muzzle at 865 meters per second, striking the man's cheekbone and exiting near his right ear. The corpse collapsed wordlessly. The counter-sniper duel had begun. German sniper teams worked in pairs, shooter and observer, often rotating positions to confuse their opponents. They were armed with precision rifles assembled in Oberndorf, each fitted with hand-lapped barrels, tolerances down to 0.01 millimeter. Against that kind of craftsmanship, the Soviet Mosin looked like a farm tool. But Soviet tactics compensated through patience and mathematics. Over the next 30 hours, Sidorenko used the mirror decoys to manipulate German fire, noting impact craters to triangulate positions. By rotating the mirror slightly with a stick tied to fishing line, he simulated movement, drawing volleys. Each shot gave him more data. By dawn of the 3rd day, he had mapped 3 firing points, 50 meters apart. He eliminated them sequentially, firing just once at each, always from a new angle. German field reports later noted enemy sniper group of at least 6 men, though there was only 1. His deception created phantom platoons. The physical toll was monstrous. Soviet medical records describe how long-duration hides often led to frostbite, hypothermia, and hallucination. Sidorenko's body temperature fell below 35 Fahrenheit by the 2nd night. He lost feeling in his fingers, relying on muscle memory to operate the bolt. the scope fogged from breath. He cleaned it using vodka, which froze instantly into white frost before evaporating. Yet he persisted, guided more by rhythm than by thought. The mirror trick became ritual, realigning angles by feel, counting seconds between shots. He claimed later that the hardest part was not shooting, but listening to my own heartbeat too loudly. At times, artillery rolled overhead, 122mm howitzers firing 21-kilogram shells, and the ground trembled like a breathing animal. The mirror decoys quivered, yet held. For 72 hours, the Germans fired more than 180 rounds of sniper and machine gun ammunition at empty light. On February 4th, Soviet infantry advanced under cover of morning fog. Sidorenko remained in position until the line moved forward, only revealing himself when comrades stumbled upon him half-frozen. His recorded tally for those 3 days stood at 12 confirmed kills, but his true contribution was unseen. German snipers in that sector ceased operations for nearly a week, convinced they faced a network of Soviet sharpshooters with optical camouflage, psychological warfare through physics, for the cost of 2 mirrors weighing less than half a kilogram. When word of his method reached the Central Women's Sniper Training School near Podolsk, instructors replicated his experiment. Laboratory tests confirmed that mirror scattering reduced detectable scope reflections by up to 90% under direct sunlight. Within months, field manuals recommended reflective displacement techniques, placing false mirrors near hides to confuse enemy optics. Yet, bureaucracy being what it was, official adoption lagged. Some senior officers mocked the idea as unmilitary tinkering. Sidorenko himself never patented or codified the method. He simply used it again whenever conditions allowed. By war's end, he had recorded over 200 confirmed kills, received the Hero of the Soviet Union Medal in 1944, and trained dozens of successors. But, in his private notebook, preserved today in the Museum of the Great Patriotic War, he scribbled a single equation describing reflection angles, alongside a note: "The mirror sees what man cannot." The irony was that his stupid trick emerged not from science laboratories or high command, but from the debris of civilian life, broken glass from a destroyed home. It embodied the character of Soviet adaptation in 1943, improvisation under scarcity. That same winter, Soviet factories in the Urals produced 28,000 rifles per month, often without varnish or proper bluing, because manganese shortages forced engineers to replace alloys with recycled steel from captured German tanks. Snipers, like Sidorenko, fought with tools held together by cold and will. The PU scope's nitrogen seal leaked. Its eye relief was barely 68 millimeters, often resulting in scope bite when fired from awkward positions. Yet Soviet shooters learned to cushion the stock with cloth or paper to avoid injury. Every defect became doctrine, every flaw an advantage when inverted. Historians analyzing the Battle of Velikiye Luki often treat it as a smaller echo of Stalingrad, a brutal urban siege fought over railways and prestige. But at the micro level, it was also a test bed for battlefield intelligence. German supply data shows they expended 1,200 tons of artillery shells trying to suppress snipers between December and February, much of it wasted on illusions. Soviet deception, from dummy tanks made of logs to mirror reflections, tied down German firepower equivalent to an entire division's output. A single sniper using mirrors could distort tactical maps, forcing overcorrections. In modern terms, Sidorenko's 3-day operation achieved a cost exchange ratio of 1 to 500. One man's effort consuming the attention of hundreds. Invisible warfare through misdirection. Eyewitnesses who met him after the battle describe a man of few words, prematurely aged, fingers permanently discolored from frost. He rarely spoke about the mirror trick except to say, "Light killed more than bullets." Yet his legend spread informally across sniper networks. In Leningrad, instructors at the 1st Sniper Battalion taught recruits to mirror the mirror, place decoys not only to confuse, but to signal. During one operation in 1944, pairs of mirrors were used to mark enemy strongpoints for artillery, visible only through scopes. What began as a stupid idea became low-tech optical warfare. The Germans, for their part, never fully understood what had happened. Intercepted correspondence from Army Group North mentions peculiar Soviet use of reflective surfaces. Some speculated the Russians had captured experimental anti-glare optics. Others blamed defective German lenses. The truth was simpler. A draftsman with a grudge against sunlight had bent geometry to his will. After the war, when the Soviet Union demobilized millions, Sidorenko returned to Smolensk to teach drafting. He refused to let his students use rulers before they learned to draw straight lines freehand, saying machines and men were only as precise as their patience. He kept his sniper rifle dismantled in a wooden box, scope wrapped separately in oilcloth. When he died in 1987, his family found 2 cracked mirror fragments inside the case, still smudged with soot and fingerprints. What makes his story enduring is not the kill count or medal, but the inversion of logic it represents. In an age that worshipped industrial mass, the tank factory, the bomber fleet, the assembly line, Sidorenko weaponized something as fragile as reflection. He proved that invisibility could come not from absence, but from overwhelming visibility. Too many reflections for the enemy to interpret. His mirrors didn't hide him by darkness. They hid him by confusion. And that, ultimately, is what the Eastern Front was. A continent-sized hall of mirrors where perception meant survival. From a strategic viewpoint, the cumulative effect of such innovations mattered. Soviet sniper activity in 1943 inflicted estimated 11,280 German casualties. According to Wehrmacht loss logs, small compared to total losses, yet disproportionately effective at eroding morale. Each sniper induced paralysis along kilometers of front, slowing offensives, consuming artillery, draining logistics. Sidorenko's contribution fits that pattern perfectly. An individual act magnified through psychology. When commanders later calculated resource efficiency, they found that one trained sniper consumed less than 20 kilograms of supply per day, compared to 800 kilograms for a tank platoon. Yet their tactical disruption often exceeded what entire armored units achieved. Invisible arithmetic, balancing tonnage and terror. Technologically, Sidorenko's mirror trick anticipated future optical camouflage research. During the Cold War, Soviet engineers revisited his notes while designing anti-reflection coatings for the Dragunov SVD rifle's PSO-1 scope. Some even proposed deployable mirror arrays for decoy positions, a concept directly linked to his field improvisation. Physics preserved through folklore. To visualize his 72 hours is to glimpse the war stripped to essentials: steel, glass, breath, and nerve. The air thick with propellant smoke, the ground vibrating from distant tanks, the taste of iron on lips cracked by cold. Through it all, one man manipulating light as both weapon and shield. Every shot measured against geometry, every heartbeat calibrated against survival. When historians summarize the Eastern Front, they often quantify it by scale. Tens of millions mobilized, billions of bullets fired. Yet the reality of that scale was built on infinitesimal acts like Sidorenko's. The Soviet Union's victory was not solely forged in foundries or marshaled by generals, but refined in moments of solitary endurance, where intellect met instinct under snow. His mirrors, dismissed as stupid, became metaphors of adaptation, the simplest possible solution to the most complex human problem: being seen. In the ruins of Velikiye Luki, amid shell craters filled with ice and glass, reflection itself became camouflage. And in that frozen silence of 1943, Senior Sergeant Ivan Sidorenko proved a paradox that would outlive the war. Sometimes, to disappear, one must shine.